What Everybody is Saying by Joe Navarro. This book is written by a retired FBI agent about reading people. It reminded me of another book that I'll recommend at the end of this review. This guy has spent his entire professional life studying, refining, and applying the sights of nonverbal communications, facial expressions, gestures, physical movements, body distance, touching, optics, postures, and even clothing to decipher what people are thinking. Learning to use the info in books like this, written by people who were in the FBI, can give you a fucking leg up over other people in sales and business and stuff like that. He originally came to America as an immigrant. He was very young and he found in school that the body is like this billboard that advertises what people are thinking about. I mean, if people are talking to each other in another language, and it's not Spanish, which I know better than probably anything that isn't English, I find myself wondering what they're saying. And it's like that wonder will take me to their body language. So imagine being this young kid in a very different country, a very different place from what you're used to, but what you see is what you're consciously using to understand what people are saying. There are 9 chapters, most of which are a tour of the most important nonverbal body parts and what they tell you. Apparently, most people don't have a sense of situational awareness. The common saying is that common sense is no longer common. And this is where that comes from.
I had no idea that I was gonna be fired. I had no idea that for over 3 years he was completely addicted to cocaine.
Observation is a skill that can be learned, for sure. But like many of the other most important skills anyone in America will have to learn to truly get their way in life, based on so much more than just my experience, it's not taught in school. In the first chapter, he talks about the 10 commandments of nonverbal communication, in terms of learning it. There are lots of things he says in that chapter that are really important. I've gotten other books on this topic and I don't find them as helpful because they don't explain things like this. They don't give you those disclaimers, especially in the beginning. I think the beginning is an underrated area to explain them. There are 2 things you should classify nonverbals under: comfort or discomfort. This simplifies everything. The next chapter is about the brain. Why we really do things that we do all the fucking time, like touch our foreheads, bite our lips, or rub the backs of our necks. He talks about the 3 brain parts and what they do. He talks about the fight or flight, or the third response to different outside external stimuli, the freeze mechanism. The next chapter is all about feet and why, surprisingly, they're the most honest teller of nonverbal communication. Whereas the face, or the higher up you go, actually the less honest it happens to be. And this is because we are practically trained from a young age to use our faces to lie about what we think. A reason I like to get books like this is to learn not just the ins and outs of these subjects from people who have relentlessly been studying, contemplating, and refining and exercising them for decades, but to learn a lot of misconceptions that so many people seem to have about those things, and what information is really at the forefront of the fields in which those things are kind of analyzed. And that knowledge helps a lot. And, sharing it in certain situations and contexts can help you come off as more interesting and valuable to others. And not sharing it, at least, gives you contexts in which to use it. Of course, probably just as, if not more importantly, or not use it, which adds value. He doesn't just talk about feet in that chapter, but also the legs. And this is how multifactorial, nonverbal communication can be. But with legs, it has to do with so many things, from walking speed, pointing direction, what causes those things to change, why, leg movement, happy feet, interlocking ankles, and lack of movement. The next chapter is about the torso, the clothing, the puffing up of the torso, breathing behaviors, and this dude really unwraps the whole package. I really admire the stories, not just how they're told and how they apply as examples of these things, but also how diverse they are in terms of what they pertain to. The next chapter is about arms and hands, pointing, lifting, holding hands high, arm withdrawal, and how that has to do with self-restraint. There are really important everyday things in this book, and not everyday things in this book. If you see a child who tends to seriously withdraw their arms when their parent or another adult gets near them, you should be concerned why they still don't teach you shit like this in every school, especially in the US. I don't understand. I can listen to all these books and none of them are gonna tell me why they don't teach you these things in school. He talks about a lack of reciprocity in nonverbals, why it feels the way it feels when you reach out your hand for someone to shake it, and the other person doesn't notice, or for some reason they reject it. He talks about all the larger, like the dominance, the territorial displays. He has like a paragraph for every single position I'm talking about, like I'm listing in this video. Also on the topic of arms, he says, the general consensus on tattoos, unfortunately, because if you have a tattoo, it's not like you're not a human being still, but the general consensus is that, people prefer not to see them. And if you have tattoos, getting people to like you is easier when they are covered. I'm included in that group of people, having no tattoos myself. Do I hate tattoos? Do I hate people who have tattoos? Am I against tattoos? No. No and no. But celebrities, apparently, even have to mask theirs. If you're a rapper with a bunch of tattoos on your face, I mean, it's part of your brand, I guess, so I suppose that doesn't really apply to this. But I think he's talking, about like TV show hosts and actors and actresses and everything like that. Then he talks about hugs, and he starts talking about the hands. And that's where he briefly tells the story of Hitler, because, dude, Hitler may have been Hitler, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a phenomenally charismatic speaker. I'm Jewish, so believe me when I say I'm not a fan of him as a human being. Then he talks about how, in conversation, the author, not Hitler, we expect to see each other's hands. And how we kind of like, intuitively sense that something is kind of off if we don't. And then the different types of handshakes, like there's the businessman handshake, the salesman handshake, and the politician's handshake, and how they really make people feel versus the intention that, the salesman or the businessman or the politician really gives off. The amount of conceptions this dude highlights in this book is just mind-boggling. But at the same time, it's kind of not. I mean, he spent decades in the FBI and teaching other people about what he learned. And what occupations or interests you could guess someone is engaged in just by looking at their hands. What stood out to me most about the hand and finger chapter is, when you're around someone and they're using their hands for something, maybe they're touching yours, maybe they're playing with something, and then, from the background, something happens, or someone drops a plate and it cracks, or someone shouts something, and all of a sudden, their hands stop. Maybe those things are not nearly as loud. They just happen to pick up on it, or they have a certain thought. That usually means that something that occurred to them that came into their heads at that moment caught enough of their attention for their mind to tell their body, wait, shut up. I think I heard something. The following chapter was about the face, and it seems like the facial cues of nonverbal communication are so stigmatized that it's almost like the face tends to lie more than anything else. We are pretty much taught to lie with our faces. Also, probably in school. It's really sad how much school messes a lot of things up. Whether intentional or not. I don't know why it would be intentional. We are taught not to look each other in the eyes. Let's not just blame school for everything. It's also technology and the way we use it and all this other stuff. But in this chapter, the author, we've been waiting for it. He covers micro expressions, or micro gestures, as he calls them, but that's just the face. The eyes are something we really will never have complete control over, because other parts of the face are far less reflexive in their movements. He really does kind of talk about everything, except the genitals. He talks here about the eyebrows, eye blocking, eye flashing, what those are. I didn't know what they were. The speeds, the movements, what they indicate, the direction pointing again, like kind of with the feet and the legs. And then he goes to the mouth. Imagine what it's like to be him, to walk around knowing more than like 99.999% of people, at least, what's going on in someone's head that no one else does, based on just their body language and their clothing and everything else like that. Basically everything that they are not saying. And by someone, I don't mean just a particular person. I literally mean generally anybody. He stresses eye rolling and how it's meant to convey a sort of look of disgust, because we adapted to reject spoiled food or anything that might harm us. I feel like lots of things we do to reflect how we really feel, these non-verbals that account for 55 to 62% of what people are actually saying in conversations. These things can be gauged by thinking, what if the last few million years never happened? If these things, the notifications, the dings, the bells, the flashes, the I love yous, the snakes in the grass, the backstabbing, the lies, all of it, how would that register naturally millions of years ago? Eye rolling at a stupid joke on the very lowest level of the brain, like the reptilian brain, is showing, disgust because that person is not amused. But on a higher level, like the neocortex, is where the sarcasm occurs. The neocortex is a newer thing. Sarcasm is a newer thing too. Last time I checked, it's not like cavemen presidents were just joking around about grabbing by the pussy and all this other stuff. But how would they react? chances are, based on what he says in the book, if the way they would act then matches how they would act now, plus all of the, newer behaviors and nuances and stuff like that of modern human behavior, registered on top of all those years of evolution, all that together is probably a little package of what they're really trying to say deep down. And that's just my little analysis. Anything that doesn't make sense about it is, without question, kind of in the book. Because if it weren't for the information in the book, I probably couldn't have come up with it. As it turns out, most investigators, even, are not that good at, detecting deception. Because the whole last chapter is actually about deception and how it's a topic that's worth looking into. So many people are bad at detecting lies. Even people who say, it takes one to know one. People who, grow up, they're, used to hearing lies and all that other stuff. Those people aren't much better at it than FBI agents. And the consequences can be enormous. This involves comfort level. Maybe if someone is lying constantly, they're in constant discomfort, depending on so many things like how long they've been doing it, who they've been doing it to, how much those people matter to them. But it's people are more likely to tell you the truth when they're comfortable doing it. A good reason it's tough to tell when people are lying is all the different layers of reasoning behind their body language. I mean, if you have some weed in the back of your car, you could tell the officer a lie who's asking about it. But what if you decided to tell them the truth because of how scared you were of lying to them? And you took the fall, you paid the fine, your record got expunged, and everything is all good until 4 years later when you get pulled over because your taillight is out and you were too busy to just have it serviced at the time, and you tell them that you genuinely do not have any drugs in the back of your car, but your heart is pounding and you look them in the eye when you say it, and then they ask,
"Why are you so nervous?"
What about that? Now, I'm gonna be honest and say that I'm not asking for a friend, but I did explain to them the whole story, and I'm in a rush to get home because it's a 2-hour commute from Westchester, Pennsylvania to Easton, Pennsylvania, and the traffic was picking up and I got a warning. He talks about the honest part of the brain. Again, the author, not the officer. And says, try truly smiling to someone you dislike. It is extremely difficult to do. This guy has a knack. He really does, for telling stories, to kind of anchor us and teach us, the little tools that can help improve the interpersonal relationships for the rest of our lives. And I don't know, man, I really enjoyed this book. Quotes, "Most people spend their lives looking, but not truly seeing. Our feet and what they can perform are a testament to exquisite engineering. People who are being deceptive lack confidence in what they are saying." Direction 1. I recommend this book if you are someone who doesn't really see what others are saying. You hear it and you don't actually see it, and it bothers you. I also recommend it if you're like me and you enjoy people watching. Direction 2. If you like this book, I recommend Captivate by Vanessa Van Edwards, about basically the science of people and social interaction, and being more social in an age of artificial intelligence and distractions and diversions and attachments and all this other stuff. Aside from How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, it is probably the number 2 book I would recommend on social skills. I also recommend The Like Switch by Jack Schaefer, about, winning people over and influencing people, because that's also written by an ex-FBI agent, and not the same one. You get sort of a different perspective. What Every Body Is Saying by Joe Navarro. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books I mentioned in this video. If you guys want me to check out a book and review it, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you checked out this book and you like it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button. If you like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. And if you could turn on that little bell to receive a notification every time I drop a new video, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.